Welcome back, heroes. Today we're talking patch 12.07 Revelations and 12.1 Curse of Ula'tek, and showcasing 3 ways where the stories unfolding during it are following the Warcraft storytelling rubric one for one, as detailed by Pays Off Metzen in the Preface of Chronicle Volume 1. Most importantly, we'll get into how many of the wars we fight aren't even of our own making, and why it falls upon us today to correct these warped histories and learn from the echoes of the past. Metzen writes, quote, "Ultimately, this grand and super nerdy editorial undertaking gives us an amazing perspective on Warcraft's recurring themes and conflicts. How societies often clash before seeing a common humanity in each other. How earnest, well-intentioned heroes can often succumb to temptations of power. And how failing to take responsibility for the mistakes of the past can lead to calamity in the present. These are just a few of the motifs that form the common thread of Azeroth's great history, expressed across disparate cultures, factions, and individuals over mythic spans of time. Cycles within cycles." Now, you may already see the picture forming, but let's walk through a 3-chapter breakdown of how Revelations embodies these themes perfectly, starting with a common humanity. Warcraft started out with orcs and humans, 2 peoples from different, initially unrelated worlds, an unstoppable force against immovable objects. These demon-fueled, pillaging, ravenous orcs would carve a dark impression upon this new world, and in return, the Titan-forged descended humans, with their steadfast courage and quick-witted cunning, took this impression and doubled down on their counterattack with righteous conviction. Little did either force really know that the Dark Titan Sargeras, master of the Burning Legion, had set his eyes on Azeroth, and the once honorable but nonetheless savage orcs of Draenor would be his maul to break her defenders. Now, for generations, it seems, orcs and humans have been bitter, fated, mortal enemies. However, during the events of World of Warcraft and then in the Chronicle book series, we've since learned a lot more about the orcish homeworld Draenor. Not only first-hand experience, but by the telling of its ancient discovery by a Titan. His name was Agrimar, and what we learn from this story is that Draenor's history, and more importantly, its many peoples, had all been a product of Agrimar's ordering of the world. None more so than the ogres and orcs. To keep a long story short, Agrimar found Draenor covered in living carnivorous plant life that needed a serious trimming. And so the Titan creates and deploys an elemental giant to do this work safely. The war between Vine and Stone, the Primals and Breakers, resulted in smaller and smaller life forms like the Gron and Ogron, eventually even fleshlings imbued with the element of spirit, the Orcs. Agrimar, this fierce Titan warrior of order and light who was mentored by Sargeras before he raised the Legion, is truly the forefather of the Orcs of Draenor. It is also said that Agrimar discovered Azeroth, and with the Pantheon's aid this time, he suggested once again deploying stone giants to battle the Black Empire which had gripped the young world. These Titan-forged, who would later become the Vrykul from the Curse of Flesh, who then became the humans, and Grond of Draenor, who would later become the ogres and orcs, share a common humanity. Or maybe it's orc-anity. Agrimanity? Or Titanity? Now, well, you get the picture. Don't even get me started on gnomes and goblins. These stubborn, spiteful geniuses who battle for engineering supremacy amongst one another at every step actually share a maker too. The Titan Keeper Mimiron, master of invention, created the mechagnomes who later became the gnomes. But all but forgotten by the goblins is that their ancestors too were tinkered with by Mimiron, who used primitive creatures in experiments with Kajamite to evolve their intelligence. with the goblins as a modern-day byproduct. And so, we have a few very relevant examples where denizens of Azeroth are crafted by its storytellers to adopt this theme of commonalities. Now in patch 12.07 Revelations, some fans are feeling just like the characters themselves about some fascinating news from the Heronir. Some find it confusing, others unaccepting of it, and others perhaps even apathetic. Orwena and Hagar tell the elf and troll leaders of Azeroth that long before the clashing and hatred of these two races, for territory, revenge, or justice, that they shared a common ancestor, one that the Heronir also descend from. They speak of great hunters who followed different paths and split into three, and amongst themselves split even more before battling one another. But like the orcs and humans, the Heronir, elves, and trolls share a common origin. Now, does this mean that we're all going to hold hands, sing songs, and learn the sea together? Not exactly, but it's a start towards recognizing that we're fighting someone else's war. A war between brethren, in fact, who also share a common humanity, the Titans. So, when the world of Warcraft reveals to us that the Heronir can share some insight to the deep history of the elves and trolls, I'd argue this isn't a new age, hand-wavy, rug-pulling move at all, but accurate and faithful to the one core theme that this franchise will show us again and again: how societies often clash before seeing a common humanity in each other. Section 2 shouldn't take as long, as we move into a theme that built one of the most iconic characters of the franchise. How earnest, well-intentioned heroes often succumb to temptations of power. Need I even say it that Arthas, the Lich King, who took up the cursed blade Frostmourne to avenge his kingdom, embodies this line perfectly. The young Prince Arthas was baited by Nathrezim dreadlords into wielding this terrible weapon, thinking he could use it to defeat them and defy the scourge the demons had unleashed. His goal began nobly, if indeed mercilessly. But Arthas isn't alone in this folly, and his actions led another down a similar path. Kael'thas Sunstrider, Prince of Quel'Thalas, who nearly doomed his own people with dark allegiances to not just demons of the Legion, but to Illidan's Stormrage, who raised a rebellion within it against Sargeras. Kael'thas' intentions were to save his people, after Arthas and the Scourge had ravaged Quel'Thalas and destroyed the Sunwell. The High Elves needed a new source of magic to survive, and Outland had the answers. Kael'thas' ambition led him down darker and darker paths, until he too was now under the thumb of the malevolent Eredar demon lord Kil'jaeden. Lost to reason or nobility and obsessed with wielding godly power. So, when I look at patch 12.07 Revelations, and the story told with the young, fierce Amani troll Zul'jan, I see again an earnest, well-intentioned hero succumbing to the temptation of power. For Zul'jan comes from a line of oppressed peoples, colonized by the ancient Highborn and High Elves who seized troll lands. As grandson of Zul'jin, he carries a weight that some call a shadow, but one that he sees as an inspiration to do right by troll kind. Zul'jan's drive to avenge the injustices of the past and retake Amani land has found him responsible for the death of his uncle. As in a scene so familiar to Arthas taking Frostmourne and maiming Muradin in the process, Zul'jan claims a cursed dagger that erupts violently. This dagger he had found for the purpose of unleashing an ancient spiritual beast named Ula'tek, whom the Amani once used as a weapon against a great enemy. Zul'jan now seeks to wield Ula'tek's power to devastate the elves of Quel'Thalas and seize the land earned with Amani blood. I fear Zul'jan, like Arthas and Kael'thas before him, will succumb to a most unfortunate fate. And while it's tragic to see a hero fall into despair, doubt, and reckless anger, it is once again a faithful retelling of a recurring theme in Warcraft's vast history. And finally, we come to a natural conclusion with the third line in the preface: how failing to take responsibility for mistakes of the past can lead to calamity in the present. In patch 12.07, the Amani and Quel'Thurai tensions are high. Despite a cosmic invasion at their very doorsteps, these bitterly positioned elves and trolls are barely holding together a tenuous truce of sorts for the sake of Azeroth's world soul. The calamity present isn't truly the void, but the rift between Azeroth's children. If elves, trolls, and even the Haranir cannot act as one people, if orcs and humans, gnomes and goblins cannot overcome the biases of time, then Azeroth is that much more imperiled by our divisions. And the mistakes of the past that divided us so often are not made only by mortal hands. For as we covered, our wars are not our own, and they go back millennia. Many of the mistakes that we face the repercussions of were forged by Titan hands in the name of order. Sargeras's Great Defiance, Agrimar's Taming of Draenor, and that world falling into his darkened mentor's hands, this caused the rift between orcs and humans. Mimiron's calculated cold innovation left two peoples he bears the responsibility for as outcasts to each other. And the kidnapping of the Prime World Soul, whom the Haranir call Al-Nahara, forever changed the fates of elves and trolls. And though we didn't create these mistakes, it will be by our hands that they are made right. In realizing that bloodshed for the wrong reasons, for another's flawed design, will never bring justice, will never bring closure or satisfaction. To ask why we fight is to ask why the leaves fall. It is in their nature. The real question for our world of Warcraft is what is worth fighting for. Were we to find new, justified reasons to battle each other, it would still be more meaningful than fighting wars decided by feckless makers who don't know what it is to be mortal, to live and die so briefly and love so fiercely that you'd risk anything to protect your own. Our fight is with history itself, reckoning with it, and yes, reconciling it too. Elves and trolls may not have to make peace, but the reasons they fight one another have to be worth it. Because while we shed blood, take lives, and raise villages, the souls of the fallen do not escape the mistakes of the past. Every mortal soul, still today, even after our venture to the Shadowlands, faces the Arbiter, established to judge the contents of their lifetime and choices, condemning or binding them to fates they never asked to face. Pelagos or not, this system still standing makes our little skirmishes look petty. As Sylvanas put it, toy soldiers in tin plate and beasts howling for honor. You see, until we direct our fight towards the makers who set us on this course of division, we will continue to shed blood for their eternal war. Something I've just put out a new video on, and I recommend you watch after this outro if you haven't seen it yet. And there we have the simple 1, 2, 3 ABC level breakdown of why World of Warcraft patch 12.07 Revelations is actually quite consistent. And if I do say so myself, a thought-provoking development for the story. WoW's writing is at its best when the world is like alchemy. Reactionary, real, unpredictable even. I wouldn't say that Warcraft's story necessarily needs to be manually written as much as it needs to just be discovered. Because the foundation of this franchise is already designed with core elements that react negatively, positively, and violently with each other naturally. This world can write itself. Characters' motives and the powers available to them are so often part of this pre-existing soup, and each of them is a spice or ingredient. All we have to do is stir the pot. Thank you for listening today. My name is xaxxas, and please share all of your thoughts and comments below. Tell me what you think about 12.07 and what's coming in 12.1, Curse of Ula'tek. Once again, please check out the last video I posted. It was a labor of 5-6 months' time. A lot of work went into it. But until next time, take care of yourselves and go with honor.